going on, everybody? Good Wednesday evening to everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. Thanks to everybody that's already in the chat, getting your questions lined up. We'll be taking your questions tonight. Super chats, as always, jump to the front of the line. We are monitoring the Texas basketball game. As I say that, Cam Heide just followed up a Dalen Swain miss. So Texas, just under 15 minutes to go, second half at Auburn. Texas with a 52-44 lead. CJ, Texas was up by 14 at one point, and then, man, some of the same stuff we've seen this year with this team that's frustrating. Some fouling, just some mental lapses, but overall, man, they're shooting the ball well. Dalen Swain's having a big night, and Texas so far getting it done. And I don't know where you stand on this, but Jerry and I talked about this on our latest On Texas basketball video. This team, they can make a legitimate run at making the NCAA tournament. They basically got two road games this week. If they split these two, you just win one, you're still in really good shape the rest of the way. But if you start the week with the win at Auburn, man, you could be setting yourself up really nice here.
No, absolutely. And that first half, I mean, look, you walk into halftime with a pretty significant lead on the road over Auburn, and it felt like you were nothing but frustrated given the fouls and the sloppiness with the turnovers, and yet you're here with an 8-point lead under 15 minutes to go in the second half. So, look, this team is building, right? And it's not a perfect product, right? But we knew that, Jeff, right? It was one of those things where it was, hey, get in the tournament. We'll evaluate at the end of the year, but a tournament is a great place to start for Sean Miller in year one as the head coach at Texas. I will say this, it certainly helps when you have someone like Dalen Swain, who basically has just taken this team over. And I know Texas is averaging, I think the broadcast said, 86 points, the most since the mid-90s. Well, when Dalen Swain's averaging close to 30 over his last 3 games, and he looks like he's on path once again to do exactly that tonight, boy, does that help the rest of the team find some sort of rhythm offensively, especially when guys aren't having their shot fall. But right now, got to like what you see. The defensive effort in the first half especially was fantastic. Let's see if they can continue that on to the final whistle.
I don't mean to disparage anybody, and I'm certainly not making light of something that Sean Miller, quite frankly, gets perturbed about on a regular basis, rightfully so. Is Jordan Pope just doing a bit at this point, like with the fouling guys on three-point shots? Like, I'm almost convinced he's doing a bit. Like, there's no other explanation for it.
And the one that he fouled on, I mean, it was an 1-3 from beyond the arc. Clearly hit him in the elbow and still turned around, looked at the ref, said, what are you calling the foul for? I mean, it was a clear contact. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll keep everybody abreast of what's going on in Auburn with the Texas men's basketball team. CJ, we got some off-season stuff to talk about. We've got some recruiting stuff to talk about, high school recruiting stuff. It still does matter, folks.
It still does.
Still does matter, and we're continuing to cover it here as we always do at On Texas Football. CJ, let's go ahead and get to how we started our morning. Cam Hall, 2027 Edge out of Mansfield Summit, commits to Texas. Had a chance to kind of sit on it all day and marinate on it, get your thoughts on it. What do you think about the newest member of the 2027 recruiting class?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think this is a guy with a ton of upside. Obviously, someone Texas identified very early in the cycle. About 2 or 3 months ago, we sat there and said behind the scenes at OTF, hey, we should probably get ahead of this, right? This is a fit that we see as a possibility. Cam Hall, really talented out of Mansfield Summit. Of course, Mansfield's no stranger to producing top-end talent out of the DFW area. But he's someone that, you look at the upside, and I think he had 10 sacks, 18 tackles for loss this year as an edge rusher going into his junior year. There's plenty to clean up, pad level, ability to use his hands and, get rid of blockers. But altogether, this is a really solid first take off the edge, and someone who I believe, Jeff, plays with a very high motor as well.
Yeah, recent offers from Wisconsin, Stanford, Arkansas had offered, Kentucky had offered, so he had SEC offers. He put out a top 12 back in November, right around Thanksgiving. Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Baylor, Arizona State, LSU. Kind of in terms of regional schools, the usual suspects. He is the first high school prospect to commit to Texas since Will Muschamp came back to Texas as the defensive coordinator, so that's something to file away. Fourth member so far of the 2027 recruiting class. But CJ, an edge guy, he's had a relationship with Lealon Clark for a while now. that was a really big deal. Maybe an underrated retainment, if you will, for Texas to get Leal Clark back for another year. Because there was some concern when Lane Kiffin got the LSU job. Hey, was he going to go back to Baton Rouge and go work for Lane Kiffin at LSU? Not the case. So between Leal Clark and Kenny Baker, I think Will Muschamp's got two really good defensive line coaches on his staff.
Yeah, I think so too. And look, this is again, Alan Clark has done nothing but earn his keep at Texas, right? With Ethan Burke and Colin Simmons and Zeno Umozolo coming back. Lance Jackson, the immediate emergence, now going out and adding the 6'3", 235-pound Cam Hall out of Mansfield Summit. That's a great first addition to the 2027 class at the edge position. So, look, I'm a fan. I think Cam Hall, again, I think it's a very high upside. I think this is, again, a guy who was a big fan of Texas early on. He was on campus for the January 17th Junior Day, and now you are seeing Texas add him to the fold. And, again, 4 commits in the class. J.T. Girardi out of St. Don Bosco Prep up in New Jersey, the tight end. Obviously, Easton Royal, the brother Martin in Louisiana. And look, and Gritty James down at the Houston area. I think this is a very solid class. And look, so far, Jeff, Will Muschamp's having his fingerprints all over that defensive side of the ball.
No doubt. Speaking of defense, 2026, not quite done yet. There is a signing day coming up next week for anybody that's still left on the board in 2026. And CJ, Texas bringing in a visitor, a defensive line visitor. Now, you and Jerry Hamilton have both reported over on TexasFootball.com that some of the staff members, they were looking at maybe, hey, can we pick up a guy here late, maybe a developmental piece, a late bloomer. It's good to see that those guys are still on the board. And that's one of the benefits of going to 105 is you have room now to add a couple of these guys. So, CJ, they are planning as of right now on bringing in a defensive line visitor for the 26 class this weekend before the dead period.
Yeah, Elijah Ali out of Downey, California, St. Pius High School. He is expected to be officially visiting the University of Texas this weekend. 6'4", 285 pounds. This is, and let's be, pretty blunt here, a developmental long piece on the defensive line, right? He doesn't have a very extensive offer sheet, but look, with 105 scholarships now to work with, this is something that you look at and say, okay, Jeff, late in the cycle, if we're still having holes or if we still need a body at a given position, this is the time in which you can go out there and maybe add a guy you probably wouldn't have ever picked up the phone for. So I think, look, having watched his tape this morning, whenever Jerry put out this news, you see the athleticism, very raw at the sport of football, but altogether, this is a guy that should you get him in your system for 2 or 3 years, then you have something to work with. So I'm a fan. I like it. I will also add this. Damod Lewis, a 2026 edge rusher out of Myers Park High School in Charlotte, North Carolina. I talked to him about a week ago. He said he was still hearing from Texas going into the February signing day. Again, haven't heard if he's going to be on campus. I have a message out to him. Haven't heard yet back. But ultimately, this is one that you look at and say the Texas staff continues to evaluate and recruit through the whistle. I know that's a term that gives some folks PTSD, but this is just another example of exactly that.
Yeah, I know Jerry had reported a while back that Kyle Flood was also looking for potential late ads for high school offensive linemen. And, similar to the defensive linemen, it would be developmental pieces. But, that's one of 2 ways you're going to fill out your roster to make sure you've got enough bodies to get you through camp and to get to, to run your scout teams during the season. Is it's either going to be high school guys or, like we talked about. Now, I don't hate the idea of backfilling through the portal. Like once the dust settles and you get through spring ball, hey, maybe we need another, offensive lineman and go get you one or what, fill in the blank position. And it's not guys that are necessarily going to compete for playing time per se, but kind of like the non-quarterback Matthew Caldwell, if you will. Like, hey, you got to know what you're getting into, right? Yeah. No guaranteed playing time. But if you want to come get some of your grad school paid for and hang out in Austin for a little bit and maybe do your small part to help Texas get back to the playoff, there's a spot for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the side of that is, hey, if you've been playing at a lower G5 or, if you're making that jump up to the SEC level, if the NFL is not in your future, but you want to stick around the game, Steve Sarkisian and Will Muschamp are two pretty good guys to have in your corner if you want to get started as a GA as well. And look, I don't know what the future holds for a guy like Matthew Caldwell or an MJ Morris, but hey, if that makes sense to them to then go out and pursue coaching, this is a good place to start. So altogether, it's recruiting through the whistle. It's a lot of these guys evaluating what the future looks like for them. And hey, maybe they catch fire, right? Maybe they catch fire and become a big-time contributor for Texas. Now the NFL looks like a more of an option for them as well.
I want to stay on the offensive line real quick because, one of my favorite recruits in the class, and again, like going to 105, it gives you some roster flexibility where you can go at it. And I know they, you're losing some guys. They needed to add an offensive lineman anyway, but I really like the pickup of Caden Scherer from Georgetown. Like I think if you're gonna take a guy that probably isn't gonna help you as a true freshman, and unless you're just really special, true freshman offensive lineman shouldn't be counted on anyway. Unless you're Kelvin Banks and you're a walk-in, like you're 3 and done of the NFL, and probably gonna be a first-round pick. But like that's the kind of evaluation, CJ, I'm looking for with offensive linemen that you take late in the cycle. Like
yes.
guys that are athletic, they got size, but most importantly, man, they've got position flex, because there's nothing better than a guy that's able to play multiple positions where you can manufacture depth at multiple spots with one guy.
No, I completely agree. And I think the staff kind of got a little shell-shocked, right? And they said, hey, we got another toolsy guy from the area. We're not letting him leave. Because you go back and you look at Jacob Ponton out of Dripping Springs, Jeff.
Yeah.
What did he just do for Texas Tech this year, right? He went out as a developmental piece, had to gain about 30 pounds to his frame. And in year 2 as a redshirt freshman, he was a freshman All-American for Texas Tech, a big piece of that offensive line. And he was in a very similar developmental frame as Scherer, right? There's a lot of the same similarities there. So that's something that I look at and say, hey, not again. They're not letting a narrow guy get out of town before they get a crack at him first. And for Scherer, I know you saw him in person. I got to see him in person. A very athletic kid, played all sorts of sports growing up, from track to discus, to throwing, to wrestling, to soccer, which for an offensive lineman, sign me up.
Mm-hmm.
But altogether, a toolsy kid that I think the staff would look back and say, I'm glad we got this guy.
Real quick, since we're talking about recruiting, we'll take this question from Cisco Diaz. Cisco, thank you for the question. Said, is Cam Hall primarily edge? I noticed he played some DT as well. He's 6'3", 6'4", about 235-ish. So, look, I'm never going to project exactly where a guy's body is going to go, CJ, but I think he's probably going to remain an edge guy.
Yeah, for now, I would say edge. To your point, was it Tavondre Sweat as a senior in high school was 260 pounds and then added a literal 100 to his frame. So you never know when these guys get to the college world, and now they're eating legitimate meals 3 times a day. They're in a weight training system 5 times a week. We'll have to wait and see there. But right now, I project more to an edge with kind of the ability to spin down to a 5 or 3 if needed.
I saw T Sweat. I first saw him because I got, Rodney Southern, who's the head coach at Copper's Cove now, was the head coach at Huntsville. And I'd gotten to know him when he had the Belton job, when he had David Ash and Durham Smythe back in the day. And I remember going down there the spring of Tavondre's sophomore year, and he was 240 pounds. So from the spring of his sophomore year going into his junior year, basically in about 2.5 years, when he got to Texas as a true freshman, he gained probably about 70 pounds.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those deals, man. Some guys and it's not like he was just sitting on the couch, eating ice cream and just watching TV and just gaining like sloppy weight. Like he was still playing basketball. It's just his body just started filling out to the point where what was he? He was like I think he was the heaviest guy at the combine.
Yeah, I think he broke a record like for multiple years. They were saying this was the biggest guy that we've seen. And to your point, the athleticism and hand-eye coordination remained because look, Texas entrusted him with several goal line passes as well. So it's crazy sometimes just how much these kids develop in the system. And I think that's part of it, where these kids come from. We hear about it pretty often, right? If they're coming from East Texas or, kind of that Southern Florida area, kids that once they get real strength and conditioning consistently, boy, you just don't know what might happen.
But like with Cam Hall, that's going to be a fun spring visit. Just to see what his frame looks like, where his body's going to go. Hey, there was another Mansfield kid, again, a Will Muschamp eval. Man, Hassan Ridgeway was kind of like that too. Like he was, a 260-ish pound guy and played edge in high school. And there was a thought at Texas, hey, maybe he could be like a 5-tech type guy. And just kind of kept getting bigger and bigger. And you're like, man, that athleticism at defensive tackle might play a little bit.
Right.
We'll see where his body goes. I think he was right around 280 at the All-American Bowl his senior year. Well, then he gets to Texas and he's like 310 as a true freshman. Like, yeah, he ain't going back to the edge. He's staying at defensive tackle.
Absolutely. Here's one for this upcoming season as well from Connor. Speaking of edge, is Justice Terry going to still get work in the middle, or is he moving back to the outside? Right now, again, this is a guy that Texas wants to utilize both spots for. And again, I think this offseason, specifically now in winter conditioning, is huge for him. How does his body change? How does his body grow? And I think what we saw in 2025 was a lot more of him as an edge rusher, right? He came in, correct me if I'm wrong, but probably around 260, 270, right in that range. So how much does he end up gaining? Because to play the interior in the SEC at the minimum, regardless of how strong or quick you might be, 290 is kind of that base level. So can he get to that to play the 3 or spin all the way out to what we then saw with, was it Byron Murphy at times playing all the way as a 5 or a 7 and then spinning down to kind of an over-the-nose piece for Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what that means for Terry, but ultimately it's wide open. I just know that role is going to increase quite a bit.
It's crazy, like the Byron Murphy thing, and it's relevant because now he's in the Super Bowl with the Seahawks, and it's kind of one of those deals where, and I'm not saying Alex January is going to end up being like an All-American and being a first-round pick, but some of the same stuff that you heard about Byron Murphy, like you'd hear about Alex January at Duncanville. Whereas people were going to see other guys at DeSoto. And it's like, hey, man, this little kind of sawed-off defensive tackle is like the best player on the field, and he's just whipping everybody.
Yeah.
I think he was going to K-State, CJ, is that right? He was committed to K-State, I think. And then Texas ends up flipping him. And same deal with Alex January. Like, hey, man, we went to see Colin Simmons, but Alex January, the motor's on, and he's whipping everybody every play. So that's the kind of stuff I like to see from high school defensive linemen is when the switch is on, the motor's running. Trust me, I'm not filibustering trying to distract us from the Texas basketball game right now, which Auburn is up by 1 with just about 11 minutes to go in the second half. But no, again, that'll be a stop, CJ, I'm sure, for you and or Jerry this spring to get over to Mansfield Summit and check out Cam Hall and see where the body's going, and see. Depending on what the frame looks like, Will Muschamp had success his first go-round at Texas, 2 guys that fit that same mold of guys that were kind of sleeker athletic types that ended up kicking inside. And one was like an offense to defense conversion. But man, Henry Melton and Lamar Houston both had a lot of success at Texas under Will Muschamp and ended up having success in the NFL. So Muschamp knows, and that's to the Justice Terry point as well. That was kind of my comp for Justice Terry was Lamar Houston. Just looking at the body type, seeing where he could go. And again, now that Will Muschamp's back, I can't wait to see what he does with Justice Terry. We've got a couple questions and a super chat to get to. We'll get to that in just a minute. But right now, let's give a shout out to our first sponsor this evening. That's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. If you want control over your own destiny in the workplace, franchise ownership might be right for you. If you think that's the case, give Andy a call. He's an expert at placing people in the right franchise that's going to fit your strengths and it's going to fit your finances. Franchise ownership, again, it's not for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy 404-973-9901 or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And again, big thanks to Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Wednesday night live stream. I was wondering if I was frozen there for a second. Thank you, Matthew. Let's get to super chat. Juan, you're first up with super chat. Thank you, as always. So, hello, guys. What jobs in the personnel department are open? And you all have intel on where they might look for scouting and whatever else. CJ, just on the support staff period, and then this kind of went underreported for a reason because we were smack dab in the middle of portal comings and goings. Sark did, I don't want to say shook up the support staff, but he made some pretty big changes with letting some people go and opening up some positions. I know Texas hired an analyst today, but there's quite a few jobs open. And I guess it just depends on how big Sark wants to make the support staff at this point in terms of who all's gonna join the staff or what roles they've got available.
Yeah, I believe director of ops is open for Texas, and that's a big role, right? That's a lot of your travel. That's a lot of your arrangements for the road, both coaches, players, team, everything. So where does Texas go? I don't know. I don't have any specific names for you at the moment. That's more to the preference of both Chris Del Conte and Steve Sarkisian. So that's probably not something publicly that we would have any idea about at the moment. But Texas, to your point, did go out and add somebody on the defensive side of the ball, right? A defensive analyst. And look, we're still monitoring what they're going to do when it comes to defensive coaches, right? Because Texas had a Nichols coach in 2025. We don't yet know if they're going to add one for the 2026. But Texas, Steve Sarkisian and Will Muschamp added Garrett Cox today, a defensive analyst coming in from Georgia, where he spent 2025. He has stops at TCU, Tennessee, and Michigan. Now joining Texas under Will Muschamp on the defensive side of the ball, a specialist in the linebacking category as well. Worth mentioning, as we talked about it, Muschamp very familiar with linebackers, safeties. We don't know where he's going to be the most hands-on at the moment, but we know he's going to be hands-on. If he's not at linebackers, well, at least Cox can be a guy in the film room that kind of, reverberates a little bit more of what his message and mantra will be for that group.
I still really like, even though Kenoto Hudson's not a part of the staff anymore, I like what Sark did when the rule got passed where you can have now, there's no limit on-field coaches you can have. And he basically elevated Mike Bamonte and Kenoto Hudson from analyst roles to assistant coach roles. Man, because it's a really good way to make sure you keep good coaches in your building, because those analyst positions, they're high churn positions for a reason, right? They don't pay a ton. And basically you're going from analyst most likely to like probably G6 full-time assistant coach is typically what the path has been for a lot of those people. And Texas, CJ, earlier on in Sark's tenure, they were losing some potential really good coaches, guys that I know they probably wanted to keep, but at the time you only have 10 on-field spots. You couldn't put everybody on the staff or pay everybody a certain amount. So guys, whether it was a Henry Fernandez or a Joey Thomas or whoever, the guys were taking different jobs. I just like this now that if you bring in an analyst and they really click now, yeah, we'll keep you around for another year or two, give you a little bit more money. And, actually maybe you got an office with your name on it rather than having to share maybe an analyst room with 4 or 5 other people.
Yeah, and of course that was always the biggest, struggle for coaching staffs. And we saw it for years with Nick Saban. Now for Kirby Smart, it's starting to be that same, kind of practice. Texas hasn't necessarily had many head coaches depart and bring guys from the staff with them, but that's where you make your money as a head coach, is when those guys depart, like a Jeff Choate, and they take a head coaching job elsewhere. How many guys do they take from the analyst positions to make them on-field coaches? And then if you're Steve Sarkisian, how do you replenish that position and make sure that the train doesn't slow down in the way? So far, we've been seeing Sark handle it very well, right? I don't know if we've seen, outside of maybe a Chad Scott, where, for 1 year is kind of a stopgap at a position. But altogether, these are guys with a Kenny Baker or Chris Jackson or a Mark Orfe, where you look at them and say, hey, I see the vision. I understand why Sark went this direction. Now it's all about making sure that whoever else leaves down the road, you have options available to you as well.
Yeah, I really like the pathway guys have now to come on board as analysts and to be able to stick around for a minute. But you're right. Like Jeff Choate did leave for a head coaching job. A lot of other guys have left for NFL spots. That's one. Look, people can say what they want about Sark, and Sark hasn't been perfect at Texas. No head coach is perfect. And I think until, you're doing what Kurt Cignetti did and you're the last coach standing and holding the trophy at the end, it's going to be an incomplete year in a lot of ways. But one thing that I do think has been a strength of Sark's, CJ, to your point, man, other than Chad Scott and really other than retaining Andre Coleman from Tom Herman's staff, he's been really good at being able to hire coaches. Like though, I mean, when you've had 2 misses out of all the positions he's constantly had to fill, I think I was told there'd be no math involved in tonight's presentation. But your batting average is pretty damn good if you've had this many coaches to hire in terms of your full-time on-field staff, and you really only had 2 misses.
Yeah, let's see that quick math. Let's see how quick you are with your percentages, Jeff. But no, you're right, because to the point that we were trying to make, there hasn't been many head-scratching decisions after a year, right? I think at first, and this is where you have to go in and end up trusting the decision maker. Yeah. You sit there and say, who's this, right? Kenny Baker, for the most part, was an unknown, right? Chris Jackson coming in from the Jaguars, no one had seen what he had done in the college world. So trusting what they see and what they hear is a big piece of it. And again, to the point, I don't know if you can look at it and say, hey, I don't really like what's going on at position X, Y, or Z. All of those guys have produced and developed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can look at this year. Kenoto Hudson probably didn't maybe pan out the way you'd hoped, and the Coach Akina experiment didn't go, I think, the way anybody hoped it would. But I mean, it's the first time Sark's made a coordinator change too. So Muschamp's going to come in. He's going to want the guys on staff that he wants, and I think you kind of. Hey, when Sark brought Blake Gideon back, like that wasn't like a slam dunk move where he was like, oh man, yeah, this is going to work out great. And shoot, CJ, you go back to like 2022, there, again, people might go revisionist history on Blake's first spin at Texas as an assistant coach. There were a lot of people that would have been perfectly fine if Blake Gideon and Terry Joseph didn't come back for 2023.
Yeah. And again, part of the tough decision making, and I think that's what we saw this year with Chad Scott is, hey, if your position isn't cutting it, or if we believe that there's an upgrade to be made, Sark's going to make that upgrade and make that change. And I think that's part of being the head man, is making those tough decisions.
No doubt. All right, let's go ahead and thank another sponsor. We'll get back to the questions and the super chats here in just a second, but we want to thank another sponsor. Let's say thank you to our friends over at Hayes City Store. There are very few restaurants that when you go to the place once, right away it's special in Hayes City Store. Trust me. My family and I can attest it's one of those places. Scratch-made Texas comfort food is what they're all about. They got their famous truck stop enchiladas, their award-winning chicken fried steak, their homemade desserts. It's all good, and it's all made from scratch. They've got live music 6 nights a week with 50 beer taps, ice-cold long necks, and tasty margaritas. They got 13 TVs in their ice house. It makes it the perfect setup for game day. And if you're out there on Sunday, make sure you check out that brunch menu. That's awesome from 10 to 3 every Sunday. Hayes City Store is dog friendly. They got a tree net for the kids, plenty of space to run around. So gather up your whole crew. Head on out to Hayes City Store for more information. Check out the website at hayescitystoretx.com. Hayes City Store, it's uniquely Texas. And Vince Young and Colt McCoy are both uniquely Texas. And with the help of those 2 lifetime Longhorns, let's hear now from our friends over at Advanced Pain Care.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. And Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
Coach 420 in the chat talking about that bacon jam burger at Hayes City Store. I'll say this, and I'm not just saying this because they're a sponsor, and I'm not just saying this because I like Travis and his crew, even though both those statements are true. It's the best burger in the Austin metro area.
Best burger.
Yeah. I've had multiple burgers, but man, even if you just want to go just get like plain old regular, cheeseburger, man, I love the burgers at Hayes City Store.
Okay. All right. I'm going to have to put down the bacon jam burger on my summer to-do list.
CB, I don't know how that would work. I don't, we just put that like in a padded envelope and send it your way. I don't know. I don't know how that works. If I did that, CB, you might end up like CJ's taco experiment ended up. It might just be no bueno for your intestines at the end of the day. Let's get back to the chats and to super chat. We got a super chat from Rocky P. Thank you, as always, Rocky P. Said, I really hope someone steps up and takes a job. Debo's everyone for that chain. Roberson Mac. Just say Rocky P must be a Warren Roberson stan to mention him twice. Justice Terry, Khalil Lockett are some names I can think of. Yeah, winter conditioning, CJ, is underway, and those workouts. This is really where guys earn their keep. Like, you think, oh man, college athletes today, you're spoiled, you're entitled, you're making money. No, man, winter workouts is the one part where you're like, dude, this is pure hell when you're out there. I mean, it can be brutal. But winter conditioning is off and running. CJ, I don't know if it's a guy, if it's someone on that list, but we talked about this a little bit last night. But man, is anybody you're just excited about just seeing them take off?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it's all the freshmen, of course, but beyond that, how do you not get excited for what another year of, and this is going to be lazy, but Justice Terry. And then on the offense side of the ball, what about Michael Terry, right? How can he evolve in this offense? Or Nick Townsend, Amari Winston at the tight end spot? Because we know, Jeff, that Texas is going to continue to utilize 12 personnel. It's just in Sark's nature now to put 2 tight ends on the field and take what he's learned from Shanahan, McVay, McDaniel, all the guys in the college football world, or NFL world, excuse me, and try to put that into his own offense. A lot of that is 12 and 13 personnel. So those are guys I'm looking at. And then freshmen, how does Tyler Atkinson get going? How does Smoke Matthews or a John Turntime, what does his body end up looking like after the spring? Because he's coming in again around 275, 280 pounds. How big can he get? Can he push for time in the spring or the fall? That's an unknown. But one thing I'll push here, and I wrote just a little bit about this over at On Texas Football earlier this afternoon, Jeff, and I'd like to get your thoughts, but you mentioned it. This is hell time for a lot of the team, right? Winter conditioning, not fun for anybody. Those days and mornings are going to come sooner and quicker every single day for the most part, but this is where you grow as a team. And, I left Orlando not knowing who might be the leadership council or the leadership contingency that, grows this team together. So that's something I'm looking forward to hearing about is, all right, is it Colin Simmons or Anthony Smith? Where's Hero Canoe? Who else joins the group? Is there someone from the portal or the high school ranks making noise already as a leader? That's something that I'm looking forward to seeing a whole lot about. And it's, quite frankly, a big unknown at the moment.
Yeah, especially I think what complicates that process, CJ, is, Arch on the shelf after his surgery, at least for a little bit, Gooseby on the shelf, Anthony Smith recovering. So, man, you got some key guys that are recovering. One guy you mentioned there that I think is really important to this whole deal, and it hasn't, because, again, like, he wasn't going to be a first-round pick if he had decided to leave school and not come back for his last year. But, I don't think we talked enough about what a plus it was for Texas to get Hero Canoe back.
Yes.
And that was just a really good take out of the portal last year. I surpassed expectations, like went way beyond any expectations I had for him. Like, he strikes me as a guy that you could look at this team in August and be like, okay, guys gravitate to him. He's got a voice. Like, he could be, especially right now, again, while you've got some guys out, he could be one of those guys that emerges as a leader. Like, honestly, since he's been there longer than anybody at this point, man, Connor Robertson probably needs to be one of those guys.
Yeah,
on offense.
I'm not. Yeah, real quick to build on that. I don't know if you got to see Robertson at all at Westlake, but this was a fiery guy. This was, hey, yeah, I am the leader of this team. I am the guy that gets this engine going, and that was while playing with Cade Klubnik, who, in his own right, was a very passionate leader and competitor. So Connor Robertson, absolutely. I think that's a fantastic pull.
Waves Deep with talking about going back to who we want to see break out. And I like the leadership aspect too, CJ. That's interesting. He said, want to see the weaponization of Michael Terry. Man, that running back room is so unique. Rod Babers and I did a running back breakdown here on the channel earlier this week. I just feel like for a wide zone running game like Texas likes, like Hollywood Smothers is a perfect fit for that. Mm-hmm. I think you've got basically a better version of what Trey Wisner was doing with Hollywood Smothers. And that's no disrespect to Wisner. I just think Smothers is that good. Raleek Brown's got a really unique skill set that you can do a lot of different things with him, put him in a number of different spots. I like Derek Cooper, the potential he's got as a freshman to really find his role as kind of an inside zone runner first and maybe be your short yardage guy. Man, for lack of a better comparison, CJ, like Michael Terry, if he can handle the role, he could kind of be like supersized Keelan Robinson, not in terms of like top end speed, obviously, but I'm thinking more of like just how they used him in the pass game. It really says a lot about a guy's talent level and a skill set when you can use him, like you can put him on the field and move him around. He's really like a specialty player, but he can still get his. Like even if the defense knows he's on the field, like, okay, we got to count for him because they're probably going to do this. Well, then they do this and he's still, getting his touches and making an impact on the game. He could have that kind of role, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. And look, Keelan Robinson, for the most part, got drafted because of his versatility and because he ran a 4.42.
Yeah.
Now, the production doesn't align with being a draft pick. But, hey, because you saw him out receiver as a kind of a scat back out of the backfield, as a kickoff and punt returning option, hey, all right, maybe we can utilize this guy, especially with the kickoff change rules. For Michael Terry, this is a little bit different because there's a guy that's 6'3", going to go into about 220, 225, and, he can catch the football. He can run the football. He even threw the football in high school. The versatility's elsewhere, but it's all the same. And that's how the weaponization was utilized for Keelan Robinson. And to the comment, I absolutely hope this is something that Texas utilizes with Michael Terry as well.
With guys that are that dynamic and that unique in their skill sets, you can get so focused on trying to make like the conditions perfect for them to get involved that you end up misusing them. Like I know there's a lot of guys that could be the answer to this question or could be the fill in the blank answer for this statement. I will contend probably to the day I die, or unless I hope I never have to find somebody who can be the answer to this question. Like for me, Marquise Goodwin's the most misused player that I've seen since I've been in my lifetime following this program.
I like that.
Like it is insane. And I'm just going to try to make sure my blood pressure doesn't spike. Anybody that knows, listen, follow me during the Longhorn Blitz days knows where I'm going with this. Like the fact that I had to sit in a press conference and listen to Brian Harsin justify why he couldn't get Marquise Goodwin the football because the ball wasn't on the right hash mark. And Brian Harsin's a really bright guy, but that's what I'm talking about, CJ. Like you can so overthink it with these guys that you just, you end up, what in the bed at the end of the day and not using these guys right. But to Sark's credit, like Keelan Robinson's the one that stands out. Like he did that with Keelan. Like he eventually found, I think there was some of that maybe early on with Jordan Whittington until they just realized, Jay Witt's a receiver and we're going to use him as a receiver and we're going to get him the ball as a receiver. And he ends up getting drafted and he almost ends up in the Super Bowl with the Rams, even though they lost the NFC Championship game. They got close. But, I don't feel like there was any meat on the bone at the end of Jordan Whittington's career. I don't feel like there was any meat on the bone at the end of Keelan Robinson's career. Plenty like Marquise Goodwin and go on down the list. Like there's plenty of meat left on the bone for a lot of guys. So I say all that to say, I hope that's not what becomes of guys like Michael Terry and Raleek Brown that have such these unique dynamic skill sets. Sark really finds a way to use these guys the right way.
Yeah, I'm with you. And again, I think this year was a little frustrating because you tried to go a different direction with the offense. Obviously, you were hampered by injuries to DeAndre Moore, Emmett Mosley, right, towards the back end. Ryan Wingo dealt with his hand as well. So I think you tried different directions that ultimately you wouldn't have preferred if you were Sark. And, that's something that sometimes you just have to do if you're a head coach. You got to work with what you have. In Texas early on in last year, they just didn't have a lot. So that's something that I think we'll see. And when you get really comfortable with a lot of these guys who are on campus for a long time, that's when you start to get familiar and really comfortable with, all right, what now can these guys do? That's going to be interesting.
I'm only mentioning this because I love the guy Marco Mendez mentioned. Marco said, I wish Marcus Johnson would have had better quarterback play to display his strengths. I'll tell you what, though, Marcus Johnson, say a couple things about Marcus Johnson. One, dude played his best games at Texas against OU. Like that's
Yes.
the 2 wins during his time at Texas over Oklahoma. He played massive roles in both those games, the 2013 win and the 2015 win. Second thing, that guy just worked his tail off, and I think was kind of the poster child. Like we talk about the NFL draft now with Texas, and it's not just are you going to get somebody drafted, it's how many guys and in which round and what is your draft class going to look like. And we're seeing that play out right now with Shrine Bowls last night and then the Senior Bowl. I know Shrine Bowl practice. I forget when the games are. I just mainly focus on the practices. But yeah, Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl going on right now. At that point, Marcus Johnson to me was like the poster child for, man, he should have been drafted because his pro day, he and Brendan Schooler had 2 of the most impressive pro days I've seen since I've been doing this. Like Marcus Johnson was like 6'1", like 190 something, 193, 195 pounds, ran in the high 4.3s, like verticaled out and this scout. I'm watching the scouts be like, my God, what was wrong with this guy? Like, why can he produce? I'm like, dude, did you watch the quarterback play? Gotten while this dude's been on campus, like, yeah, nobody could get him the ball. So yes, and 3, and this is for producer Matt. Marcus Johnson does have a Super Bowl ring as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. So there is that.
There is that. John Harris is another one, and one of the best examples of guys who didn't get drafted but probably should have. I mean, Poona Ford. I mean,
that man. I talked to now Oklahoma general manager Jim Nagy. This was a couple years. I think this was the last Big 12 media days that we had, and I was talking to Jim Nagy, and because he was obviously he was the head of the Senior Bowl at that point. And I was asking him about some of the guys, Christian Jones and some of the other guys that would have been that were Senior Bowl candidates at that point. And we started talking about Poona because he was in the Seahawks front office when they got Poona. And he's telling me, man, they're getting down to those late rounds and they are just keeping their fingers crossed, like, please, like, don't draft him. Like, because they knew they were going to get an absolute steal with Poona Ford. So, and they did. And the fact that dude's still cashing checks is – I'm not surprised because, like Marcus Johnson, Poona Ford, all he did from the minute he walked in the door at Texas was just work his tail off.
And he's getting better and better, it feels like, every year. Was it 3 or 4 years ago, I think, was when folks were like, oh, hey, this cat's really good. And then you see him just continue to evolve. And I know you're watching the other screen over there, Jeff. Texas now down 10 against Auburn, but to have your thoughts.
Distracted, but yeah. No, with Poona Ford, like, I think it's the ultimate compliment, like, for Jason Kelsey, who's going to be a Hall of Fame center, for him to come out and talk about the guys that were toughest for him to block, for him to mention Poona, just because of, for the same reason, like, I thought Poona was going to at least have a chance to have a pretty decent NFL career. Everybody gets so caught up on the height. I'm like, yeah, you get caught up on height, but you forget the fact that he's built like a fire hydrant, but his arms allow him to play like someone who's 6'4". He's strong as hell. Like, you cannot move him. And he's got enough length to have leverage on you. That's exactly what Jason Kelsey was talking about when he was talking about all the things that have made Poona Ford really good and made him tough to deal with. We'll get back to it here in just a second. Let's shout out to another sponsor. Shout out to our friends over at South Point Dodge. There's nothing like Texas football, and nothing runs like a Ram. South Point Dodge is Austin's Ram headquarters, and the deals are hotter than a Saturday in DKR. Huge savings on Ram trucks and Jeep SUVs, plus exclusive perks for all Texas football listeners, 90 days to make your first payment. And they'll ship your new ride to you anywhere in Texas or beyond. They've got over 600 vehicles in stock. So whether you need a workhorse or a weekend warrior, they've got you covered. Visit southpointdodge.com or go check them out off I-35 in South Austin. Get to the point at South Point Dodge. Yeah, not positive developments on the Plains right now for Sean Miller's team. Texas down 10. CJ, I obviously we've been doing this show. I don't know where it got away from this team, but man, this is pretty disappointing result the way things are trending right now.
Yeah, it is. And where it got away from things is, look, Texas had 9 turnovers in the first half. That was the time to stretch the lead. Your defense was very, very solid. Only 2 turnovers in the second half, but Auburn was in the double bonus with 10 plus minutes to go. right? This team just continues to foul and foul and foul. And, I jokingly, I did joke about it, Jeff. You were with me. I did joke about it. I said, look, I think Sean Miller just hates this team. And I think that's probably a little harsh, but the frustration that we hear and see in press conferences just of, hey, man, this team will foul anything. I mean,
yeah,
you don't say that unless you're sick of it. So, that's something that you look at and you say, okay, when the fouls are corralled and you're able to play cleaner basketball, that's when you play your ultimate best ball if you're Texas. And that just didn't translate towards the first half with the turnovers and the second half with the fouls.
No doubt. We'll keep tracking it. But again, Texas down 79-71 to Auburn. About 90 seconds left in that one. Let's get to a question, CJ, from Bobby Jenkins. Said, what edge do you think can step up and make an impact opposite of Simmons, since we didn't get one in the portal? Vosick, if he can stay healthy, Zena, Smith the Robo. All good candidates. Landon Jackson not mentioned. Think he's another name you got to consider in there. Man, the Colton Vosick thing is fascinating to me, because he's one of those guys, again, that it's not that he's not talented or he's incapable of producing. It's just he hasn't been healthy enough to make an impact. And this year, man, there were just too many bodies in front of him, of guys, maybe not between Brad Smith and Trey Moore, maybe not guys that were actually, quote unquote edge guys on the depth chart, but guys that were going to be on the field before him. So I like those candidates, CJ. I still go back to Brad Spence, though. And
yeah,
I want to see what Will Muschamp does with Brad Spence.
That's my thing, is where does he start? Is he a guy that they say, hey, edge is your home now? Or do they see more of him kind of as a backer? I don't know. I would assume edge, because I think we saw his best football off the edge. But to that point, who else in that room is going to stand up opposite of Colin, I think, is a huge question. I'd lean towards Lance Jackson if Texas is in obvious passing situations. But I'll tell you what, I know that we've discussed this a few times in terms of retentions or, basically keeping guys out of the NFL draft. Well, keeping guys out of the portal or pulling guys out of the portal, also big. Getting Zena back is massive.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's been talked about or appreciated enough. So I'm absolutely on board with Zena being a big player for Texas next year. That's about the time that you really start to see guys blossom who have been in the system and gotten to see time sparingly throughout the 2 years previous.
I'm on the Smith the Robo bandwagon too.
I like that pick too.
Just because maybe it's not fair of me to have high expectations for him, as crazy as that might sound, but I didn't think we were going to see him at all this fall.
I didn't either,
because of the knee injury.
Yeah.
And the handful of snaps, he's twitchy. He's got a great first step. So I'm all about Smith the Robo, seeing what he can do. I know they wanted an edge out of the portal. And look, they might find a guy that's a depth piece at edge that they take, again, just to kind of backfill the roster like we've been talking about. But I think those three guys, their names are on screen: Colton Vosick, Zeno Moselo, Smith the Robo, throw Lance Jackson in there. Those are good. Those are going to be the guys in your primary rotation. I feel like, again, Will Muschamp can maximize a guy like Brad Spence, and if he decides to drop Colin Simmons into coverage, CJ, it's not going to be as often or on as many critical downs as we saw him drop into coverage this past season.
I tend to agree with that. Again, Will Muschamp knows how to weaponize players as well. Again, and real quick, Texas down 81-76 with 50 seconds left. Texas doesn't have any timeouts remaining, so they just took their final one. But I'll say this, Richard Wesley, for a guy, and I know one of the big industry ranking services just came out with their final 5-star rankings, Jeff, to reclassify and remain a 5-star.
Yeah.
That's very difficult. To do so in the trenches, that's as rare as we've seen, right? That doesn't happen really ever. So for Richard Wesley, that speaks to really how his talent might project off the edge. I don't know what his immediate impact is. We just went down a laundry list of names that we believe are all going to be really, really good at Texas. But he's another guy where you look at and say, okay, we've seen a freshman impactful edge every year over the last 2 or 3 years. Can Richard Wesley also be that for you? I think he could.
It's similar to Derek Cooper on offense, like because of the personnel you've got in front of him. I mean, you don't need him to come in and like expect him, okay, we need you to do this. You can just let him find his footing and just naturally kind of gravitate to his role. And if he performs well enough to get in the rotation, he performs well enough to get in the rotation. But it's not like that's a lot different than be like, all right, we need to get Richard Wesley ready for 25 snaps a game or whatever. Like, thankfully, you're just not in that position at edge right now. We got a confusion on the court in Auburn. Is this a possession bit we're doing right now?
I don't know if they called that a foul or not.
My guy Cameron Parker getting some screen time though. How about that?
Oh, he's looking good, nice and shiny up top.
That he is. I may have to send him a text. They're producing the game for Craig and Eddie. By the way, you want to get some great stories from somebody's time as a Texas assistant coach? Eddie Orrin's got stories for days. So some good old Texas basketball stories from back in the day.
Oh, Sean was on the court.
Oh, is that what
he went full Mike Tomlin? But I guess they called the foul because Auburn shooting free throws. I don't have the sound on, boys, so fellas in the chat, bear with me here. But Sean was 6 inches on the court.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not gonna lie, he does tend to drift close to the like where he's almost an open 3-point shooter at times. Like,
hey, Shaka played literally on the court for a couple defensive possessions.
I've been kind of wondering, like, okay, man, I just hope there's not a game where that comes back to like bite you. It doesn't backfire on you. Man, it's gonna be a foul fest at the end, isn't it? All right. Well, Texas down 82-76 to Auburn right now in the closing minutes. CJ, what are you tracking right now as we head into the recruiting weekend? Again, just to kind of re-rack it. The staff has been out on the road this week, seeing everybody's got the photo ops of Sark at various schools, extending offers. Commitment today from Cam Hall, the 2027 Edge out of Mansfield Summit. You've got one, potentially more high school visitors in the 26 class this weekend before the dead period. Should see some defensive prospects in the 27 class too. This is probably going to be a weekend, weather permitting, where Will Muschamp is probably going to try to get some of those guys on campus. So CJ, anything you're tracking right now going into the weekend?
Yeah, good point. Who else shows up on campus? Texas, to your point, went out and offered a number of guys, especially in the Houston area this weekend. We know that 2027 linebacker Jaden Nelson is going to be on campus. Texas actually offered him on Monday. It was Jeff Banks, Steve Sarkisian, kind of leading that contingency of guys. Mark Orfe was out in California. He made the way back to DFW area. He offered a Red Oak 2027 cornerback as well. So that's going to be the big thing for me is who shows up. Because if you get an offer, show up immediately and continue that immediate relationship, not saying you're going to end up in the class, but it's a great way to continue building relationships, which even in today's day and age, Jeff, still very important in college football.
No doubt. They're giving a split screen of Texas, Auburn to close here in Houston, TCU.
What a hideous court that is.
I try to avoid watching anything involving the Hateful Eight schools from the Big 12. So I'd rather not give any of their product my eyeballs or any of my attention that I don't have to. 26.9 to go. Texas down again, 82-78 to Auburn. We're still tracking this one. I guess it's 84-78 because I'm a little bit behind, so I'm guessing Auburn's going to make these free throws that I'm about to watch as Jordan. Boy, you wish Jordan Pope had a foul to give had he not fouled the 3-point shooter at the end of the first half, but I digress. Such is life. Brian says men's basketball is not good at all. Look, it was going to be a struggle this year for them to make the tournament. They've still got a shot at it. They just, again, a game like this where you had a double-digit lead at one point to have it go the way it's going, it shrinks your margin for error. And the big thing, CJ, that they've got to do, they've got a lot of winnable home games down the stretch, like LSU, Ole Miss, Oklahoma. So they've got some winnable home games that they've got to win. Like the only home game I think that they're probably going to be not favored to win is probably going to be the Florida game. Other than that, though, they probably need to win the rest of their home games to have a shot.
I tend to agree. And for folks who got this line before the game, these next 16.1 are going to be they're going to make you sweat, because I think that opening line, Jeff, was about 6.5. But you're absolutely right. You know, it was going to be a frustrating year, right? It was kind of a ragtag team put together, but you know, there's talent here. Evidently, we're seeing that with Dalen Swain, right? I think Jordan Pope's making plays at times. Obviously, Matas has had games, both good and bad. You know, he's playing at the very least. But what you can tell is, hey, if Texas is going to be averaging in the mid-80s, that's what you hope to see in the SEC. This is an offense-driven league, and it tells you that once he gets his guys in the system, that style and offensive output is going to remain. Now he can build it the way that he wants. And if, hey, you go on and continue to stack 4 ranked wins right now, well, now your resume is improving as well. So get in the tournament and you're having a successful first year.
In the words of the great Mike Reiner, get yourself in the tournament and give yourself a chance. All right, so we are about to, as Modest commits a foul, and yeah, so Texas is going to lose this one to Auburn. They're down 4 with 2.7 left, and Auburn's got the ball. You know, one of my favorite things about the calendar right now. Okay, they're giving him the and one. Nice. That's appropriate. You know, CJ, one of my favorite things about the calendar this time of year, though, you've got conference races in basketball. You know, we're talking getting ready for spring football. The fact that we're about 2.5 weeks from the start of Texas baseball, got the alumni game coming up on Saturday. Man, I am pumped for some Texas baseball this year. I'm pumped for Texas baseball every year, but I think this team's got a real chance to be the last team standing in Omaha.
It's always reassuring when your manager comes out and just says, hey, I like the depth on the mound. And I know that we've talked about it, Jeff, since then. But that's something that you don't hear very often, is just the outward expression of, hey, we're going to be really good in this one department, because coaches hate to be wrong, right? Us media folks know that. We hate to be wrong. So to hear that from Jim Schlossnagle, during last week's media availability, that's reassuring. That gives you a bit of a peel behind the curtain, to the sense of, hey, this staff really likes some of these arms, and how can you not, right? Should Volantis become your Friday night guy, Luke Harrison returns.
She should.
You know, Flores is going to be a weapon for you. So will, Ruger Riojas. I mean, Grubbs, Crossfield is another that we've heard a lot about as well. So looks like they're going to have a lot of talent at the plate. Now the arms and the depth of arms is something that, quite frankly, they just didn't have a year ago.
Yeah, and there's still some things to sort out position-wise, like, one spot open in the outfield that's kind of Anthony Pax to lose at this point. Really talented freshman. Sounds like they're going to go with Casey Borba at first base, probably third base by committee. Rodriguez coming back from the hand surgery, but I think the plan was last week, maybe early this week, to start getting him back in the cage, taking some swings, so he should be good to go. But man, this team's really talented. SEC baseball is always a freaking meat grinder. And that, as everybody was excited about Texas going to the SEC for a lot of reasons, but shortly after, okay, what are going to be the cool football trips that Texas gets to take? Man, just thinking about the matchups year in, year out with baseball, dude, we talked about it last year, CJ. There were some weekends, man, you had multiple weekends in conference where it felt like a super regional from Monday to Sunday. Like it was that intense. It
absolutely was. And you previously only really got that when a team like LSU came to town and they were highly ranked. And now you're getting them almost every weekend. And how do you not get excited for that, right? And I was looking at the schedule the other day. If you like Texas football and you have the means to travel, how do you not look at the schedule and say, sign me up? Tennessee, obviously the trip to Bluebell is going to be something for Jim Schlossnagle. Buckle up. You get to go to Vanderbilt. You get to go to South Carolina. Oh, and by the way, you get to host a number of big-time programs as well. I cannot wait, Jeff. I cannot wait. And hopefully for some of these midweek games, I'm thinking about setting up a little table outside over by the tennis courts so I can see over the fence a little bit and get a little bit of a kick start on some of these Tuesday night, Wednesday night streams as well.
Producer Matt asked you in the chat, CJ, because you seemed really bummed at the end of the basketball game, not just because Texas lost. Producer Matt asked in the chat, did you have Texas plus 5.5 tonight?
No. The line was 6.5. Texas lost by 6. So if you got it early, you ended up covering. Congratulations to you. Unfortunately, my brain at times, most times, does not work too often. So I took it live when Texas was up 12 in the first half. I got 3.5. So I'm a loser. Texas actually rimmed out or hit the front rim on that Hail Mary. I would have gone nuts had they hit that. But no, I'm Sandman got me lost.
Well, yeah, in the chat was some fun. Sandman says, CJ, will you sit next to me at the dish? I don't know, Sandman. Can you be respectful of CJ and his family members? I'm going to be very careful with where this line of questioning may go.
This is actually a funny story, Jeff. Sandman, I would sit next to you. Yes. Here's a funny story. Texas, when this had to be 2018. Not the year that they were abysmal, which I think was 2019.
That was 2019. It's hard to forget that. Yeah,
it is, because that was the year I covered them for the Texan. 2018, Texas hosted, I believe. And I remember sitting at one of the regional games. We had great seats right behind home plate, kind of in that lower bowl area where you tend to run in some scouts if the game is good, right?
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there, and this scout wanted nothing to do with me. Couldn't tell you what team he was. He was an older fella. But I had a couple beers. I had a couple peanuts. And every time there was a change in innings, I would look at him and go, hey, man, I'm going to go to the concession stand and grab a beer. You want one? And he looked at me with the most disgusted look. Like, this kid did not just ask me if I wanted a beer as a scout working this game. And he looks at me and he goes, I'm okay, thank you. I'm like, all right, popcorn, peanuts, pizza. And he looked at me and he goes, no, dude. Well, when I came back, he was sitting about 3 rows down and on the other side of the
Oh man, I love you verbally beating down scouts, or just
I was trying to make a friend.
You're trying to be a good host.
Yeah.
Trying to be a good host. But yeah, dude, you get a Medal of Valor for covering the 2019 baseball team. CJ is not banned from the press box at the dish. I can assure you that he is definitely allowed. Yes, and Sandman, we will not ban you from this chat. Thank you for the banter and the comments. Thanks everybody for your participation in the chat tonight. Thank you, especially everybody for the super chats and hanging out with us on the Wednesday night live stream. Real quick, thank our sponsors again. That's My Perfect Franchise and Andy Ludicky. As a matter of fact, before we get out of here, let's thank Andy Ludicky one more time. Hey, if you're stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general, just call Andy. He'll take you through a process that's going to help you find a business that's going to fit your skill set and your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't for everybody, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And again, thank you to Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Wednesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. I also want to thank our other sponsors tonight, Hayes City Store, Advanced Pain Care, and Von Lane. One more reminder, you've got a couple more days to take advantage of our Portal Madness special over at OnTexasFootball.com. First-time subscribers get your first month of access for just $1. Close of business Saturday, this deal goes away. So if you've been thinking about taking the plunge over at OnTexasFootball.com, come and join us on the discussion. Get the latest news, up-to-the-minute news on recruiting team, whatever it is. We've got it. We're posting it over at OnTexasFootball.com. A couple more days to take advantage. So again, first-time subscribers, head over there right now. Get your first month of access at OnTexasFootball.com for just $1. All right, CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Matthew, behind the scenes, the real MVP for On Texas Football, behind the scenes producing tonight. And again, thank you everybody for your participation, for the banter, the comments, and especially for the super chats coming in. If you got any other questions, comments, make sure you direct them to the guys at Coffee and Football bright and early tomorrow morning. I'm sure with the result of this basketball game, Jerry's going to be very mild-mannered.
Cheerful.
Yeah, he'll be spry in the morning.
Oh, I like that. Gleeful.
Yeah. Jerry.
How deep can your synonyms go, Jeff?
I don't know, but hey,
about as deep as the bag as this team's going.
Jerry, I'm sure will have a lot to say about this game, and hopefully Blake won't be muted during Coffee and Football tomorrow, and they'll be able to get through that. So, make sure you hang out with the guys tomorrow. Tomorrow night's live stream, the normal Thursday crew. There'll be Rod Babers, Marcus Myers, and the coach Bob Shipley hanging out with you on Thursday. But for CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and hanging out. And until next time, welcome.